Hey everybody, today we're joined by my friend Frank Wright, who has a fascinating story of healing with the carnivore diet. So I'm looking forward to hearing about this firsthand. I think Frank's got a lot to share, particularly in the world of mental health. So Frank, welcome.
Hi Simon,
Great to have you here.
great to see you.
I don't think I'll do you justice if I start sort of telling your story. So I want it to come from your mouth. Frank, would you be able to share a little bit about your journey and how you discovered the carnivore diet?
Sure, okay. I need to go quite far back because I have some events through my life, so I'll just make the first bit as quick as possible. But I I was always a daydreamer at school. That's what my teachers told me. Then I think once I got to high school, I sort of discovered marijuana and drugs quite early on, around the age of 12. And my drug use got quite frequent through my teenage years.
Well,
And
was pretty
then,
young.
yes, it was pretty young, yeah. So I pretty much smoked my way through school. And then alcohol became a big part of my life and other substances from about the age of 16. So I kind of lived that life way into my 20s. I didn't qualify at school, so I didn't get any GCSEs. I took a fond love of DJing at the age of 12 as well. This was
Wow.
the beginning of what was then called hardcore and jungle, which is British dance music. Before it became drum and bass, it was that time. So it was about 89, I guess, 90, 91, 90, around that time. Um, and so I went to music technology school, but I didn't really make a lot of that because I found it hard to get into the industry to find a job. So I sort of just dragged myself through my 20s in retail and call centers. I was living a pretty debaucherous lifestyle outside of work, and it really got escalated to serious levels in my mid 20s. And I decided I needed a change. So
So
I
that was so Frank, debaucherous was what? Drug taking, drinking, partying.
drinking and drug taking, partying, yeah, every weekend without fail for the whole weekend, pretty much from the age of 16.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Yeah. So I had also taken a very keen interest in cookery at the age of 16, and that was kind of my release, my sort of my outlet out of the chaotic lifestyle. So I had been cooking every single day without fail after work for myself. So I built a very large collection of cookery books. I've been cooking all world cuisines. I was very well versed. I mean, I'd have a cookery book in bed every night before drifting off.
Wow.
Um,
You're reading
uh,
them like novels.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah. I mean, there's
Wow.
some great writers. There's like the British cookery writer Nigel Slater. His books are almost like novels because they're like diaries. So things like that I would read. I would read. They were great. Um, so I I took a very keen, well, actually, what really got me into cookery was my first Thai restaurant. I just thought it was just like, wow, these flavors. And so I took a very keen interest in Thai cuisine, and that led me to my first holiday to Thailand in my around 25. So I went and I just fell in love with everything. And I was there for 2 months, and I came back, and I was like, I'm going back. I knew friends that were teaching there, or friends of friends, and I just thought, right, now's the time, just do something. And so I got my, in fact, I flew there, and then I got my teacher training diploma there in Bangkok, and I taught. English as a foreign language there for 6 years. It ended up. So it was an escape to get away from my hectic lifestyle, but I did find the job very stressful. It was a very, very new experience for me. Big classrooms of 40, 50 children. And my first school had no air conditioning. It was crazy. So I continued drinking pretty heavily for the first 2 years I was there. And it got so heavy that I ended up in hospital with gastroenteritis. So thereafter, I came out of hospital and thought, this is serious. This is not the way I want to live my life. And I decided to take action, and I pretty much ran out of the hospital and I just started running. Now my father was an athletics coach. He had finished at this time, but he tried to get me into running when I was younger, and I never really took to it. But I at this stage in my life, I needed something to keep my head clear and keep me away from, my addictive personality. And I got hooked on running. And so I ran my first half marathon after the first month, and thereafter I averaged 70 miles a week for 2 years. And I was running track sessions at 4 a.m. before work, and then running up to 20K in the evening after. So you can usually just have one day off a week. So
Yeah.
2 sessions a day. I got some pretty good times. I won a half marathon and came in the top 5 to 10, often in halves and 10Ks. So that was a great experience. I knew I couldn't continue teaching forever. It wasn't really my passion. I was doing it for a reason to change my lifestyle. And I decided to um, develop on my love of cookery. So I didn't really want to be. I'd looked at cuisine on t TV shows, cuisine, cookery, and I didn't really want to be, in hot kitchens sweating. And so I decided to do pastry. So I went to Le Cordon Bleu, which is the famous French cookery school in Bangkok at the weekend, and I got qualified as a patissier or a pastry chef. And I actually just came straight back home and dove straight into the world of professional kitchens. So I worked in a local restaurant in Brighton, which was actually the best restaurant in Brighton at the time, for 2 years, and it gave me a good solid foundation. And then I moved on to London and I worked through some pretty high profile kitchens like the Ritz, the Berkeley, some Michelin stars as well. Um, Unfortunately, as we know, the lifestyle of chefs is pretty notorious for drug taking and alcohol, and my training fell off, and I fell back into that lifestyle. So I lived that lifestyle of cycle of just sleepless weekends and then 70, 80, even 90-hour weeks sometimes
Yes.
for about 5 years. And it got to, yeah, my mid 30s, and I realized something had to change. So I started diving into nutrition. Uh, it started with podcasts. In fact, the very beginning of that journey was actually the vegan ultra runner, Rich Roll. And so that was my introduction. Obviously, I had a grounding in nutrition science from my athletics training time. I picked up on things. I used a lot of carbohydrates then because I could use them. Um, but I did focus on at least high quality animal protein at the time as well. But I did after as the vegan um, was the entry point into my new discoveries in nutrition. Got I went down that plant-based route for a time, for 6 months, in fact, when I first got into studying nutrition in my late 30s. So I tried that for 6 months. I felt okay in the beginning, and then I didn't feel great. And then I decided to bring animal foods back. And my research drew me further on to other experts. And most notably, the first person that really made an impact was Dr. Mark Hyman. And what drew me to him was talking about someone who was studying the way that you can get phytonutrients from grass-fed meat in the animal if it's fed its correct diet. And this really sparked my interest. And so I I then moved on. He interviewed Dave Asprey. That opened up that whole rabbit hole. I started doing the bulletproof fasting at work. It was probably my best performance at work. I was fasting till 2 p.m. just with butter and MCTs. But I still believed so strongly in the phytonutrients of plants, listening to so many nutrition experts. And I was on a kind of a cyclical ketogenic diet where I would have more carbs some days than others. Some days would be around that therapeutic 20 gram mark. Other days would be as much as 100 or even 150. But I would always be very focused on fiber. So I, in fact, almost started a microgreens business because I had the whole setup with the lights and I was growing them. And I would just throw them on everything and sprouts. And, so yeah, I mean, for the next 5 years, I ate wild fish, grass-fed meat, and lots of plant foods.
Wow.
I was at this stage, I was still drinking, but I would have, 1 month off. I would go, right, I need to try and I've been trying to actually quit for 5 years because I knew alcohol is the gateway for everything else for me. And then everything else starts, and I can't stop for days. So I would go on and off of these cycles. I'd go a month and I'd start drinking, and then it would go into disaster again. And then I'd have 2 months off, and then, and it would just be going round and round like this. So it came to, through my 30s, my dad actually developed type 2 diabetes. After he stopped coaching, it was around 2 years after he stopped coaching. So he actually ran, he averaged, because I have his logs, when he was coaching, he averaged 18 miles a day for six
Wow.
days a week.
Jeez.
Just fun, never any pace. And then he continued to walk. He would go on walks for up to 20 miles a day, still after he'd stopped coaching. But he actually gave me Tim Noakes' book, The Law of Running. Back then, it was based on the carbohydrate loading theory. When I remember his diet, it was very, very devoid of even lean animal protein. He would just be like, it's okay, I just use these carbs, and he would have, like, I mean, 5 to 10 potatoes on a plate with a few veg, and he would just eat five, maybe even 10 pieces of fruit in a day, and that would be his diet. And looking back now, you can see how disastrous this is. So he developed type 2 diabetes, still very fit and active, walking loads 2 years after his running. And this was going through my journey of discovering more and more about nutrition, that his health was declining. The type 2 diabetes, 2 years later, a Lewy body dementia diagnosis came. And slowly, year after year, the decline was apparent. So, um, going getting close. So yeah, sorry, it was around the age of 40. I had to put my dad in a home because he got too much for his carers, and then it was about 8 months, and that was him gone, sadly. Um, and I that was my wake up call that I'd been going through this cycle of alcoholism on and off. I could do 2 months off and then it would happen again. And I just said, that's it. And 2 months after his death, I quit for good. And it stopped everything for me. So I was still following this very fiber rich, plant rich diet with high quality animal proteins. I don't know if well, I think it's a part of both. It's a part of my entire sort of lifestyle growing up. And also, I think looking back now that it had maybe the diverse amount of plant food, the sort of my excessive interest in nutrition that I was overloading myself with so many plant foods. It's like less is more kind of thing. I'm a very I don't know, I'm very detail orientated. So I would be really consuming like 30 different plant foods every single day. Like coconut chips and 5 types of seeds and with 5 types of berries on your yogurt, for instance. And then a salad would have 20 ingredients. And this would have been all the way, for the past sort of 7 years of my beginning of this journey. So anyway, so I was still eating like that. I was sober. I think I was coming to terms with who I am. Um, but it was the hardest year of my life, the sobriety, and I was doubling down on everything. I'd learned all of these biohacking techniques from Dave Asprey. I'd been cold plunging for 3 years, sauna 3, 4 times a week. I'm lifting heavy as possible 3, 4 times a week. I sprint the smarter, not harder approach. I'm desperately depressed still. I just don't know what I can do. What more can I do? So, in fact, I was in I've been in a 4 year relationship at this stage, and I just couldn't do the relationship anymore. I couldn't do it, and I had to just leave. I just left, and it was very, very rough. But so that the in my nutrition research, I had been looking at all of the different nutrition camps. And I mean, I'd seen Paul Saladino at the beginning of his influencer stage, Sean Baker, probably 4 or 5 years ago. And I'd occasionally listen to one of their podcasts, so I'd known about it. And I just saw more and more evidence, when you're listening to lots of different doctors on podcasts, you start to see Chris Palmer, for instance. I read Brain Energy, for instance, 2 years before, and I just started to join the dots. So I then 2 months after leaving my relationship, I found the evidence to be strong enough for me to just try carnivore because I'm always this person that's more, 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 do more. And so I just needed to strip everything back. And I read a few carnivore books and decided to just jump in. Obviously, knowing now maybe it's not always the perfect way to jump straight in overnight, but I just needed some to try this and some relief. So it was it's coming up to a year now. It's 11 months ago. I jumped in and I felt I felt fine the first day. I thought, okay, I can continue this. And then it was actually the second day that I woke up and I just could not believe the difference that I felt. I felt like you know, it felt like a life of sort of this kind of pressure that was on me, you know, clouded mentally, and everything was just lifted. that second that I woke up, and
How,
I
Frank, so how many days did that take after switching to Carnival?
it was 48 hours from the morning. It was a Sunday, and then it was a Tuesday that I woke up.
Had you
Sunday
have
started,
you
yeah.
had you ever felt anything like that before?
Nothing at all. It
Wow.
was just absolutely life-changing. And so, I mean, so I'm 11 months in my journey now. I've remained relatively strict. Well, yes, very strict. Um, I feel great. So that's what's kept me on this path.
So sort of like a self-fulfilling loop where you just keep feeling better and better, or what's it been like?
There's been ups and downs, and there's lots of things you learn along the way. It's I one thing I would say, I've so where what I've learned is that if you I've been someone that usually gets my calories in early, apart from when I was bulletproof fasting. And I've learned I have to switch that, because I wake up if I go into too deep a ketosis in the night, I'll wake up at stupid o'clock in the morning. So I'm better to push my window later in the day. Not that I'm fussed about windows as well. We know, or when you're in this low insulin state, that you're pretty much always in a state of autophagy. So I don't think that we need to worry about fasting too much, being this sort of heavily ketogenic. But if I eat later, then I sleep for longer. So that's been one of the main hurdles I've had to get over. I've been on a very, very high fat protocol for a long time, because I know that that keeps my ketones high enough. I feel better that way. I gained a bit of weight in the middle of my journey. I think I got into cheese for a bit, and creme fraiche I was eating loads of, and I just sort of cut back on that. I'm actually so I've been my resistance training, I've been lifting about 30% heavier over the past 6 months. I've slowly just been focusing on hypertrophy, and I'm recompositioning my body now, and I'm on a lower fat protocol now. I'm eating a lot more protein. So, yeah.
Are you mainly sort of close to lion diet, or what's your choice of food?
Um, Pretty close. I focus on ruminants. I don't mind having everything else. I very rarely eat chicken. I mean, I like chicken, but I just feel best on ruminants. I eat quite a lot of lamb because we're in the UK and our lamb's great. I was adding a lot of butter to everything for a long time, and I just sort of held off on that now. So I still have some raw cheeses, like I still have it at home, but I don't go ham on it. I just have little bits here and there throughout the week.
Mhm.
Still have a little bit of butter. I haven't been eating too many eggs, but now the past 2 or 3 weeks, is when I started to just cut my fats a bit, and I'm just having a few more eggs now. But I just still don't go crazy with eggs. I'm not like a 10 eggs a day kind of person. I have like three, maybe something like that. Yeah.
What are your thoughts? I mean, have you managed to stay sober this whole time that you've been carnivore?
Yes. So I got sober a year before. I had one slip up in that time. This is a pretty major one, but that was over a year ago now. And then it was 2 months after that that I went carnivore, and it's been very easy for me. One thing I would say is that what another part to play. I think that in my mental stability derailed so much when I got sober. I started to use more carbohydrates then, because I had nothing else. So I'd been on this kind of cyclical keto thing diet for years, and then I started going, okay, I can use these carbs if I go and work out enough. And I was working out more, and I was, pre-workout, I was having 20 to 50 grams and maybe post, and I was never in that therapeutic zone, I don't think, for the whole year. Um, so another part to play, I mean, I'm a pastry chef for a reason because I mean, I'm a creative person. I love the art. What drew me to pastry is the artistry, desserts and things. But I also have always loved baking cakes, and obviously we all have some degree of sugar addiction. So I think that carnivore is really probably one of the most effective things you can do if you can manage to get onto a strict protocol for over a month or, 3 months solid. You can go forward there and maybe play around with a few things, but it should shut your sugar addiction up. And for me, with a highly addictive personality, it keeps me. It's not to say I don't have stressful moments and I think about, going to eat a cake or even going to have a beer very occasionally. I haven't done, and it just keeps me level-headed there. So yeah.
Why do you think carnivore does that?
The high fat, the proteins, the way it satiates you, it's like if that thought comes into my head, I just go and eat some carnivore food until I'm full, and that's it. Yeah.
And in, some of your content, I've seen you speak about ADHD, brain fog, even autism. Are these things part of the story as well, along with depression?
So yeah, um so I went in the year of first year of sobriety, I started to very, very heavily notice my symptoms of ADHD. So I just thought, okay, I'll go and have a test for this. So I got tested. The test comes out either ADHD or autism, which I wasn't aware of. And I actually scored 33 out of 36 for autism. Now, we know that they can come together. I haven't been properly diagnosed. The waiting list is forever. I'm still on it. But um, my I've got through two half brothers and a half sister. They've all had severe mental health struggles. One of them has actually been written off from working almost his entire life. And we don't actually speak to him. He occasionally sends my mum a letter, but he's got three kids that are all on the spectrum. My
Mm.
brother's kids on the spectrum. My sister's children are they one is one has ADHD and the other has her own issues also. So it's pretty clear in my family. So I would say that carnivore helps dramatically for these conditions, but it's not a magic bullet because I'm still very much struggling with these symptoms. If I didn't have carnivore, I would not be, I mean, I would be really struggling now, I think. So I'm very grateful for it. But I think it takes um, extra protocols on top to manage your symptoms. But I believe it's enough to not have to take medication and then to manage to, take management and advice from maybe ADHD coaches, which I think I'm looking at soon. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Um, what would you recommend to people who have suffered from, let's say, mental health problems like depression for a long time? I mean, you were You were what you sort of endured it for decades before you finally tried the carnivore diet. What would your advice to these people be?
It would be to definitely look at a ketogenic diet and eventually a carnivore diet if you really want to try to find a natural remedy for such conditions. You know, the we look at Dr. Georgia Eads' work and Christopher Palmer. It's very clear that it's the most effective natural strategy. So, um, for the very, very highest level mental health conditions like psychosis, can see that the stricter you go to carnivore, the better management you might find for these severe mental health conditions. So, as I say, in my own experience, it it just completely shut everything up for me. Sort of the self-doubt, you know, the talk back in your head that I've had for so long that I always just use, I just used alcohol. Alcohol was and drugs were my escape from these things. The second I had my second drink, any of this stuff was forgotten, and that was
Mhm.
always how I coped with it. And then getting sober was, as I say, it was a real wake up, and I just couldn't work out where all this was coming from. And it just got completely shut up with the carnivore diet in 48 hours. And I've been, you know, very, very, very mentally stable for the whole year. So yeah.
That's awesome, Frank. Um, so last question, Frank. You're designing the ideal protocol for yourself. So somebody who has been down to the depths of depression, but also experienced things like brain fog, ADHD symptoms, and possibly struggle with autism. What protocol would you recommend to yourself? What protocol would you recommend to Frank? And I'm talking about even nutrition and lifestyle, and just how you live your life.
Um, develop some structure, develop a consistent sleep hygiene protocol.
So structure,
Uh,
like for example, like a consistent working routine or something like that, or like a rhythm to the week. What do you mean?
yeah, that too. Um, as a structured job. Um, I think cold therapy is excellent. So if you can, I mean, it's as simple as if you've never done proper cold plunges, it's as simple as getting in the shower. First thing you do, you wake up, you get in a hot shower, and then you
Hmm.
turn it to cold at the end for 30 seconds. Next day, 1 minute. Next day, a minute and a half. And before you know it, you're doing a 3 minute cold shower every morning.
Hmm. And
That to
in the
start your
UK
day.
and in the UK in winter, that's a proper cold shower, right?
Yeah. So I've been practicing this for there was when I was, as I say, that year I was sober. I actually filled the bath with ice every morning all the way through the winter and jumped in at 6 a.m. every time.
Or did you used to
Uh,
go to the do you used to go to the shops and buy ice, or how did you do that?
yeah. I'd fill up the ice cube things and then I'd have one bag as well. It was about 10 degrees um uh
Celsius.
when I would yeah Celsius when I would measure it with a probe. So not freezing, but well, it was pretty cold. It's cold
Pretty
enough.
good.
I think a cold shower is great. You know, so you get this slow release of dopamine for up to 2 hours. It's a really nice way to start the day. So that I think a consistent weight training program. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but it's very good for just for self-confidence. And you just sort of see your body composition changing, and it just gives you that little bit more self-confidence in yourself. Um, I I sprint for my VO2 max. It's all I really need. I think that long steady state cardio is, we can see that it's not particular it is over time it can be quite detrimental on the body. I think it's about short bursts. Um,
Where do you go to sprint?
I just went up a hill, up a hill. It's always hill sprints because it's less impact. And I'm in my 40s now. I have thought about going to a track again recently, but
Mm.
it'd be quite fun. But yeah, I'm in a town that's full of hills, so it's never hard to not find one. So I do seven sets of 20 seconds, 20 to 25 seconds, pretty much 100% effort. And just that once or twice a week. My VO2 max is 48. It could be slightly better at this age, but it's still probably in the top 10 percentile in the country. And that's another part of my regime. And along with that, I recommend that people try, well, at least go ketogenic. And then if they're still really struggling, if they have any form of sugar addiction, it's very easily derailed if you're still consuming some carbs. And I think that a strict carnivore protocol, even if it's not forever, will really, really change your relationship with carbohydrates. I think it's really important for mental health conditions to not be spiking your blood sugar all day long. And also the clean fuel and bioavailable nutrition of a strict carnivore protocol is very, very noticeable. You feel like you're getting all the nutrients, and it's
And
stabilizing brain chemistry. Yeah,
yeah, and also avoiding plant toxins. I mean, you can see
indeed. Yeah.
Frank mentioned before what happened 48 hours on a carnivore diet. It was a feeling you've never experienced before of total clarity. And for people listening, if you've never cut out all plants for a couple of days or, ideally at least a week, you'd be surprised at how good it feels with zero inflammation, zero irritation. The plants really are causing issues that might be so subtle that you don't even realize it. And if you've never experienced life without them, you might have no idea, but it makes a huge difference.
Indeed. I think we just saw recently Dr. Verma's had had brain scan, and there was had a brain scan, and there were oxalate crystals in the brain.
Jeez.
Um, so this is really something to
Be
to be
concerned
aware.
about, not as safe
Yeah,
as people think. Yeah.
yeah.
Mm. All right. Well, yeah, Frank, those tips are helpful. That's what's worked for you, and that's what continues to work for you. You know, cold plunging, sprinting, lifting weights, a ketogenic carnivore diet, which basically means carnivore, but relatively high fat.
I guess
Um,
yeah. So one thing to add to that as well is, if the further you're, I mean the more you're struggling with mental health conditions, or even across the board, we know this with autoimmunity, and even Thomas Seyfried's cancer protocol, the higher fat you go, particularly in initial stages of this, when you're healing, the better, up to the 80% fat range. And then you can play around with that stuff later. But
mm,
the higher fat, keeps your
mm,
ketones high. So yeah.
100%, yeah. 80% of your calories from fat, 20% from protein. Yeah, that's a great protocol. All right, Frank Wright, thank you so much for sharing your story. Um, I'm really happy for you that you found this way of eating. and that you've got this control and, hopefully happiness back in your life. And, I think people are going to get a lot out of this conversation.
Great. Thanks, Simon. Great to speak to you.